Hello and welcome to this webinar presentation. I've got Vic Dorfman here from memberhost.io, and we're here to help you generate more sales for your membership site. Vic has a signature system for doing this called the Outbound Sales Acceleration Formula. Essentially what it is classical sales for membership sites. One of the number one questions we get asked here at Lifter LMS and in our broader community is, how do I get more clients? How do I get more sales? It's one thing to make the membership site. It's a total other thing to actually get customers, and we're here to help you with that today. Just doing a quick tech check. If you can hear me, if you can see me, go ahead and drop a message in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. Let us know what your biggest challenge is around making sales for your membership site, your online training platform. I also want to encourage you to check out memberhost.io. That's probably the second most popular question we get from our community is, besides how do I get clients, it's, hey, what do you guys recommend for hosting? And memberhost.io is a great option. So we'll be linking that up in the chat. So check that out. And I'm going to hand it over to Vic for the presentation. So thank you everybody for coming, and let's jump into it.
Chris, thanks for that awesome intro. Thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here and to share what I've learned with the Lifter LMS community. Hopefully, guys, I'll give something to you that is valuable, that will actually help you get more members. That's the goal of today's presentation. We've also got our head of technical sales from our company, Joe, here with us. He's going to be manning the chat. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them during the webinar, or any comments or anything. Isto can chat with you about your stuff. Okay. So I'm going to fire up the presentation here. Let me know if you guys see my screen. Did you guys see the slide screen here?
There we go.
Got it? Okay. Cool. All right, so I'm going to try to keep this real short and high level for you guys, because it's easy to get into the weeds on this stuff, but I just want to give you kind of a formula, right? As we discussed, a formula, a framework, and we have kind of a fancy title for this webinar, but what it is essentially is good old-fashioned sales, good old-fashioned outreach and sales, going around knocking on virtual doors. And I'd like to make a case for why I think that might be a really good idea for you guys, okay? And basically, what I'll share is a simple outbound lead generation and sales formula, okay, that you can implement quickly and cheaply. That's a very key component of it, that will enable you to take proactive control of the growth of your membership site, e-learning site, community, whatever it is that you're offering. And this framework will help you to sell it to more people, okay? I personally use this in the two businesses that I'm involved in. I've seen our membership site customers use these techniques to varying degrees in their businesses with success. And you might already actually be doing some of these things. But what makes this valuable is that most membership site owners don't do it, and probably most membership site owners in your particular niche don't do it unless you're in B2B. And even then, maybe they don't do it very consistently or systematically, which means that the people who do it, it's more effective for them, right? It's not as saturated. So my promise to you is that if you do some kind of outbound system, and I'm going to present to you the simplest system that I know, with some decent amount of volume, you will get results, okay? So I'm going to skip a few slides that I had prepared just in the interest of time. I'm going to skip some of these questions. I'm going to kind of get to the meat and potatoes, if you guys are cool with that. And we're going to have a Q&A once we're done with the presentation, so make sure to stick around till the end if you want to ask questions. Devil's in the details for sure on outreach stuff. Okay, so obviously from the title, we're going to talk about good old-fashioned outreach and sales. And let's start with the problem. What is the problem that most businesses have, and kind of the problem that we're trying to solve specifically for membership site owners, course creators? And I'm going to use the term membership site, as a blanket term, but what I really mean is any kind of subscription model or e-learning, or even like an e-commerce thing with community component, any of those types of sites. Okay, so here's the deal. A lot of folks in the membership site space tend to think of membership sites as kind of a passive type of business model. We all know it kind of really isn't in a way, but maybe for that reason, and as well as others, people also tend to favor marketing methods that they feel are more passive, right? So inbound marketing strategies, basically. So they'll spend a lot of time on their funnel and their sales copy, checkout page, SEO optimization, YouTube, social media, and basically the attitude that these actions express, or let's say the underlying philosophy is, if I build it and advertise it a little bit, they will come. And of course, they will come, but they will come slowly. These inbound methods are, of course, you want to be doing all this stuff, but it's a slow burn, right? So if you don't already have a huge Instagram audience, or a huge following on LinkedIn, or whatever is your kind of channel of preference, then it's going to take some time to build those things up. In the meantime, you want to be growing your membership, you want to be making money, and that's where outbound marketing allows you to basically, instead of waiting for them to come to you, you go to them. And so you have control over your growth to a degree. And so this over-reliance on inbound advertising methods, it results in unpredictable lead flow, right? You don't know if you're going to have a good month or a bad month. You don't know if that YouTube video is going to drive the sales that you want. You're not really in control of those channels. And the result of that is that you're waiting for growth to happen in a sense, right? And you may be totally okay with that, right? Or you may be in a position where your inbound marketing is doing good numbers for you, but you'd like to add another channel on top of that, right? That you, again, have more control over. And obviously, if you're not growing in business, you're dying. Members are going to churn from your membership if you have a recurring model. And no matter how good of a solution you present, people are going to have financial difficulties. They're going to just, forget about it and then not want to pay anymore. Whatever the reasons are, they really don't matter. You ideally are acquiring customers at a rate that's greater than the rate that you're losing them, and ideally at a substantially greater rate than you're losing them. And then you're growing, right? So that's kind of the problem, the core issue, if you will. So let's get into the solution, or a solution, let's call it. So this is the formula that we were talking about, and it's a process that's going to be familiar to a lot of you. And it's basically a 4-step process of prospecting, enrichment, outreach, and sales. Prospecting, enrichment, outreach, and sales. And I'm going to share how to implement this process for your business. And I reiterate that if you put enough volume through some kind of outreach process, you will get results for sure. It doesn't matter what your business is. You can put me in any business right now, physical or online, and I will use some variation of this process to get customers, to go reach out into the marketplace and find some customers. And again, one really great thing about this approach is it's very outsourceable. You can basically make this assembly line, give it to Upwork VAs, which is exactly what we do. And the only real hard part to outsource or even like train somebody up is the sales component, right? Once you've actually got somebody on the Zoom, once you've actually got them on the phone and they're interested in what you have to offer, it's probably good for you to do that yourself, at least in the beginning, but that would be a good use of your time. Whereas the first 3 steps are sort of more delegatable, if you will. Okay, so let's get into what these steps actually look like. I'm going to skip the part where I talk about me because I don't want to use that time. I'd like to show you guys the goodies. And basically, we're starting with prospecting, right? So what does that mean? Prospecting is just finding the places where your potential customers gather and making lists of those people so you can contact them. So examples would be Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, various communities online and offline. Telegram groups are especially good for crypto and for Russian speakers. They all use Telegram. Live events, obviously. When we talk about networking, what are we really talking about? We're talking about prospecting, at least in part. Also, advanced Google searches. You can run certain Google queries and export large lists of potential prospects. And then one thing that I think a lot of people don't know about, which is really, really cool, and I would definitely recommend you look into, are industry-specific directories, right? Especially if you're in a B2B space, but even if you're not, and associations. There's even an association of associations. So essentially, and some of these you have to pay your way in, right? But if you anticipate that, for example, you'll be able to get a list of like 20,000 prospects, then, and maybe your offer is a couple $1,000s or whatever. And even if it's not, even if you have just a standard membership offer of $30 a month or whatever, we'll cover that scenario. Then it could be worth it, right? It could be worth buying your way into those scenarios. And so you can get pretty creative with your prospecting, and you know best where your people kind of hang out, right? Like in our thing, in what we do, we do a lot of list exports. We also go on forums and participate. We, partner with people like Lifter and other sort of well-known established businesses in our space, and we try to give value. Like that's our whole agenda, you could say, or our strategy. And when you've identified a few of these sources, let's say you've identified a Facebook group in your niche, you're going to need to extract the people in that group or in that community or from that source and put them into a spreadsheet, put them into a list. And this is where the Upwork part comes in. There's a lot of Upworkers who can basically go into any social media platform or like any situation and extract all of the members, get a bunch of their details, get their phone numbers, their emails, all of that good stuff. And that's essentially what you want. Is you want to go on Upwork and post a job and say, hey, I need to scrape this Facebook group, or I need to scrape this LinkedIn community, or I need to scrape this forum, or whatever the case may be. That's how you get your first list of prospects. Okay. And obviously, we need to use our social awareness here and keep in mind that different communities have certain etiquette. Like what you don't want to do is you don't want to just come like a bull into a china shop and come into the biggest forum in your space or industry and just start hitting people up. That is not going to go over well. You're going to want to spend time there, give value, participate, engage, and build some kind of rapport. And then maybe you'll even have the blessing of the owners to then do some kind of soft pitch or outreach, or maybe you'll even strike a partnership up. Okay, so use your best judgment on that. And that is, again, guys, we're doing really broad strokes. So if you have questions, we'll get to them. I'm sure you'll have some questions. And once you've got your list, you want to enrich it. Okay, so enrichment just means getting additional data points for the prospects on your list, right? So for example, you might scrape a directory of businesses in your target niche, but all you have are the URLs. Can't really reach out to a bunch of URLs. You're going to need contact info, phone numbers, contact person, right? Who's the person that you need to reach out to? Is it the founder? Is there another decision maker? And go. key information that you're definitely going to want to grab are the name of the owner or decision maker. If it's a larger organization, owner might not be the best person to reach out to. It might be, head of marketing or whatever. But if you're doing B2C, it's generally going to be the owner. And you're going to want their name and their time zone, which is critical, right? If you're emailing people, or if you have somebody emailing people on your behalf or calling people, you're going to want to call them at a time when they're actually likely to be at their desk and answer, or at least see your message. You're going to want their phone number, which is the most critical piece of information. It's the phone number. So get the phone number if it's possible. There's a lot of services and apps that will enable you to do that. We're going to touch on a few of those at the end. And of course, you want the email, which is probably the least effective channel, guys, believe it or not, because everybody gets so much cold outreach in their email that we get banner blindness, right? If somebody does a cold outreach to you on LinkedIn, well, you kind of expect it because that's kind of what LinkedIn is for. But if somebody hits you up on Facebook or on Instagram, and if they're slick about it, right, if they're leading with value, if they're not trying to pitch you anything, you might be a lot more open to it. And then you might click through to their Instagram page and be like, oh, this person like plays basketball and they're a real person. And there's that element too, where different channels kind of light up different parts of the brain. So you kind of want to take an omni-channel approach, but I digress. So we want to get to social media as well. And we don't need all of them. We just need the ones where people in your space generally hang out, right? So if you're B2B, it's all about LinkedIn. If you're B2C, it might be Instagram. If you're a fitness coach or yoga instructor, it might be Instagram, might be TikTok, could be Twitter. If you're like in a political niche, so your space and which info you want. And so when you're posting your job on Upwork for enrichment, then these are the details that you would include in the post. Okay, now you've got your list, you've enriched it with the info that you want. And the next step, or kind of the last step before we begin the outreach process, is we want to determine if there are any parts of the list, let's say like if there are any groups of people from your list of prospects that are particularly good prospects. So for example, if you export a list of prospects and you're in B2B, for instance, then you might look at something like revenue of the company, because that's usually available, or headcount, because that will give you an indication as to, first of all, is this a company that I can help? Does it fit within the parameters of where I usually operate and I'm able to help people best? Do they have the money to afford my thing, whatever your thing is? If it's a membership, if it's coaching, if it's some combination of things. And so that's something to consider, because you want to start with those prospects. You want to direct your energy in the direction where it's more likely to pay off, right? And if we use another example, if you're offering, let's say, coaching and education for social media marketing agencies, it would be best to target the agencies that have a certain minimum revenue, but maybe don't go beyond another ceiling of revenue. It wouldn't make sense to reach out to agencies who are, let's say, just getting started, because they're not really going to have the money to pay you. And they're not really going to be in that place where they're sort of investing in, education, getting to the next level. In general, there are exceptions, but you want to be fishing in the right pond, if that analogy makes sense. So you're going to create a few cohorts. If that is applicable, it may not. You may just have one undifferentiated list. And so now we get to the outreach component. Okay, so what is outreach, first of all? Well, it's literally reaching out to people and sending them some kind of message, right? And there are two broad ways that we do outreach. There is a shotgun approach and a sniper approach. So a shotgun approach is when you outreach to a large list of prospects, let's say, with basically the same message and you're probably not doing it manually. You're probably using some kind of tool, or you have VAs who are reaching out on your behalf, and you're doing it at some kind of scale. So we're talking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of messages over some span of time. Whereas a sniper approach is when you manually reach out to specific prospects that you've targeted, that you've sniped, and you're usually targeting them with some kind of custom message that's appropriate to whatever situation, and maybe a custom lead magnet. Maybe you're making them a Loom video. That's a big favorite of mine. We'll talk about that in a second. And of course, this is a much more time-consuming approach, and it's consuming your time, which is the downside. But the upside is that they're much more likely to respond, especially if their need is urgent. Like if they're in a desperate situation right now and you're kind of the person who can help them solve their problem, then that's a really hot prospect, right? And they're much more likely to reply to you if you do it right. And in fact, we need to take a quick detour. Hopefully I'm not going too fast for you guys, but I really want to leave room for Q&A. And these slides will be available after the presentation. Obviously, there'll be a recording. I'll also make myself available if you guys want to email me and ask some follow-up questions, because I realize there's a lot of info here. And one thing we want to touch on is temperature, which is like a fairly intuitive concept, right? Like if somebody is ignoring you and they're not looking at you and they don't care about you, they're cold. If somebody's kind of smiling at you, then they're warm. If they're beaming and like, hey, what's up, John, how you doing? Then that's hot, right? That's kind of the unofficial scoring system, if you will. And what it is in this context is it's a measure, an unofficial measure of the urgency of somebody's problem. For example, let's say you have a membership about weight loss, right? And somebody in a Facebook group that you're in that niche makes a post like this, like, hey guys, I've reached the bottom. I'm super overweight. My wife is no longer attracted to me. I have no self-confidence. My kids don't respect me. My life is not going good. Please help. Now that's obvious. I'm using a kind of an emotional example, but if you're in that industry and if you have a solution that works, that gets results, and you're confident in that, and you can help this person, then what could be a more moral thing than to reach out and offer them some value? We're not pitching them, by the way. We'll talk about the mechanics of the outreach in a second, but we're trying to help this person. This person is raising their hand and saying, guys, like, I'm desperate. I need help. And that is what we would call a hot prospect, right? Now, if a different guy posts and he's like, hey guys, I'm a few pounds overweight. I'd like to get it solved, but it's not dire. I'm actually okay. Like my wife still likes me, like everything's cool. That is a warm prospect, but they're not hot. They're not in desperate, urgent need, but they would like to solve the problem eventually. And then maybe a third guy posts and he's like, yeah, I'm a few pounds overweight, but I'm cool with it. I'm not worried about it. Everything's good in my life. I don't even really need to solve this problem. And you're not going to convince that person that, first of all, they have a problem that they don't think they have, and they're not going to, buy your thing, basically. So you want to think about it in those terms, like who is most likely to actually need your thing, be open to it, and be open to having a conversation with you and be open to your help. And it doesn't matter what niche you're in, this framework applies, right? And one thing I'll mention here is this is just my nomenclature, but I define a prospect as somebody who's never engaged with you, right? You might have sent them messages. You might have called them, maybe they didn't reply, but they've never replied to you. As soon as you get some kind of reply, as long as it's not a negative buzz off type reply, if it's neutral or positive, then they become a lead in my book. That's a huge jump in the relationship in the outreach world. They've gone from a neutral stranger to somebody who now knows you exist. You're on the periphery of their attention and consciousness. That's a huge, huge leap. That's basically an invitation to continue giving them value And these people are the most likely people to become customers because they actually, what we don't want to be ignored, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get attention in a not super annoying way. And the way we do that is through value and some copywriting. Okay, so moving back, I should say, to the outreach here. Let's talk about your lead magnet. And when I say lead magnet, I mean the value that you're giving to the person packaged up in some kind of way. And classic example is you come on a website and they're like, hey, we got this mini course. Let's say you do a Google search and you're like, how to overcome social anxiety. You type that in, and then you click through to a homepage and there's a title that says how to overcome your social anxiety in 24 hours, free mini course. And you're like, hot damn, that's exactly what I wanted. I'm a little skeptical in 24 hours. I don't know if that's possible, but let me give my email address to these guys and let me give my attention to them. And if the thing is good, if it really provides value and really helps me with my social anxiety, I'll be like, well, damn, that was good. What else you guys got? So that's the psychology, right? We're compounding goodwill. We're building reciprocity, to use psychological terminology or persuasion terminology. And when you reach out, and we'll talk about the lead magnet format in a second a little bit more, but when you reach out, let me just say what not to say. Don't say, hey, John, what's up? I have this great membership site that teaches you how to do X, Y, Z. It's really awesome and you should join it. That is spam. Don't do that. That doesn't work. You will be ignored, or worse, you'll get a nasty comment. What you do instead, and the whole approach here that we're taking, is you give value, and then you keep giving value, and then you never stop giving value ever after that. And at no point do you ask for anything in return or pitch your thing without an invitation from them. We're being of service. And and I'll admit that this was a very hard concept for me to wrap my head around until I got further in business, because I thought yeah, right. Who wants to be of service? I just want to make money. Well, that's a scarcity mindset that a lot of people have when they're sort of starting out. But then once you're doing okay and you realize, no, the fun part is actually helping people, and making money is a consequence of that. It's like a Jedi mind trick, right? But that is a real thing that I've experienced. So you want to be of service because not only is it more fulfilling, but it's also more effective at the making money part. So it just wins for everybody on all those fronts. And the catch, of course, is that these people are going to give you their attention. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to come up with something. Could be a PDF, could be a video, could be a Loom video that you made personal just for them. Could be like a part of your course, right? Could be like a lesson from your course that you give away for free, or it could even be a trial to your membership. Anything could be a lead magnet if it's of value and if it's sort of appropriate to the situation, right? You got to use your judgment again. And you're just trying to come up with something of value that's going to entice people to want to reply to you, right? And ideally, they'll actually consume the thing and get value from it. A lot of people won't, but they'll see that you're trying to help them out. You're not just pitching them. And a quick story on this is, I remember I hired an agency to help us with some operations stuff probably about 6 months ago. And the reason I hired these guys, they were expensive. They were really expensive. Is their lead magnet was so freaking good. They had, it was an ebook. It was a PDF. It was 100 pages of just pure value. I was blown away. It was the best lead magnet I have ever read, the best ebook I ever read that I didn't pay for. And I was like, man, if this ebook is that good, how good must their service be? And they had all these good reviews and everything. The service was actually really disappointing, is the sucky part, right? So that's a danger to be aware of. If you make a really good lead magnet, but then your core thing isn't really that good, people are going to be extra disappointed. And so, yeah, it could be PDF, could be a Loom video, could be a voice message, right? If you're reaching out on Facebook. But regardless of the format, it's got to give value. It can't just be like a veiled pitch. It can't be just a veiled form of self-promotion. It's got to not be about you. Okay, I'm going to just jump ahead, guys, because we're at the 30-minute mark, and I want to leave time for Q&A. So give you an example, and this is from my industry, probably won't apply to most of you, but I might come onto your site, right? I might come onto your membership site, and because you guys are basically my target prospects, if we look at it that way, and I'll say, hey, you know what? I did a speed test. I'll make you a Loom video. And I said, hey, John, I did a speed test, and I'll have all the graphs and everything up on the screen. And I said, there are 5 images on your homepage that are like 5 megabytes each, and they're taking forever to load. Here's the service that you can just upload your images, and they'll compress it like 85%. Quality won't suffer at all, and it'll help speed up your performance. It'll just take you a few minutes. And that's it. I just send that value. I don't ask for anything. I'm just being useful and helpful. I hope you guys understand like the mechanic that I'm saying here. I'm not pitching anything. It's implied, actually. These people know that you're not reaching out just out of the goodness of your heart. There is an agenda, but we're not drawing attention to that fact. We're being genuinely helpful. Now, they may or may not ever become customers or members, but that's not relevant because it's a numbers game. And that's another thing to remember about this. It's a numbers game. Okay, I think I've ranted enough on that point. So let's move on to the next slide. Here we go. I got 2 screens going here. Okay, so now you've got your list, and you've got your approach, and you've got some kind of lead magnet. Maybe you'll make it on the fly. Okay. What channels do you reach out on, when, and in what order? I'm going to give you a very simple way to do this. This is my preference, is first reach out on social media. So let's say if you're in B2B, it might be reach out on LinkedIn again a few days later, then reach out on email again a few days later, then call. And the reason for that particular format is on social media, and ideally you've already engaged with their page a little bit, especially if you're doing a sniper approach. Excuse me. Maybe you've commented on their post or in their group, you've liked some stuff, you've interacted with other members. You're not a complete persona non grata. They've seen you, at least, subconsciously, they got a glimpse. Oh, this person exists. So that when you finally reach out, you're not a complete stranger. You're a stranger, but you're not a complete stranger, let's call it, right? And the reason I saved the phone call for last is because of exactly that effect. You want the maximum amount of exposures, even if they never replied to your stuff, even if they never consumed your lead magnet, just the fact that you touched base on a few different places. They might have checked out your profile, might have built a little bit of authority, a little bit of social proof, if you have some social proof elements on your profile. And then when you call them, and I'll tell you guys a little story. I did this exact sequence. I reached out twice on LinkedIn, got no reply. Reached out twice on email, got no reply. But I saw that they saw the email, and I saw that they watched my Loom video. It was one of those Loom videos I just made on the fly. And then I called them up, and I said, hey, this is Vic from MemberFix. I'm just checking to see if you guys got the thing that I sent. I think it might be really helpful to you. And they're like, oh, Vic. Yes, we watched your video here. Our whole office loves it. Our owner's on vacation. She'll be back next week, and she'll be in touch with you. And that company became one of our great customers. And so those situations do happen, and that was kind of an easy one. Most of them aren't that easy. It's going to take a little bit more persistence, but that's the reason that I sequence it that way. All right, just gives you a little bit more time. Now, you guys know your niche, you know your audience better than I do, so modify this, play with it. This is not set in stone. This is just what has worked for me and for others. And as far as what to write, so let's just talk about the message for a second.
Hey, Vic, real quick. I think if you're sharing a different screen, I don't know if we're seeing it. We're still on the outreach slide. So you might have only shared one screen.
Yeah. No, that's correct. That's correct. We're on point number 3. It's highlighted in blue.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure we were on the right screen because you mentioned you had 2 monitors and stuff. So cool. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
We are. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. There's some of the topics kind of overlap, but thanks, Chris, for checking in on that. Right. Because we're on outreach channels. So basically, the first message is always going to be something quick and concise to the point, and it'll be something like, hi, John, I saw that you're having issues with your website. I made you a Loom video breaking down some easy fixes that are quick to implement that you might find valuable. Thanks, John. Let me know your thoughts. And notice that at the end, I gave some kind of call to action. I said, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear your feedback. Please let me know what you think. Right? We want to try to solicit a reply. And that's the first outreach. And then when we follow up later on email, we might say something like, hey, John, I connected with you on LinkedIn and wanted to make sure you saw the Loom video that I personally shot for you. I think it might really be of value to you. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks. Okay. So that's kind of the sequencing. And again, I'm keeping it real high level, guys. So forgive me if you have questions that are in your mind. We're going to try to answer them with specific use cases if we can. And finally, the last point, and perhaps the most important point, is you've got to follow up. You've got to follow up systematically, and our head of technical sales, Risto, will attest to this, is all of the magic happens in the follow-ups. And the problem is following up is nowhere near as interesting as reaching out to new prospects. It's boring. You're not getting any reply. You're getting nothing. You think it's kind of a waste of time. And our brains love new. Our dopamine system loves new stuff. But actually, following up with the people you've already reached out to is a more productive use of your time than reaching out to new people. Much more productive, in fact. We've followed up with people for weeks, months, years before they replied, and then for another period of weeks, months, or years before they became customers. And that may seem excessive, but what we sell is a little bit more high ticket, so it's kind of worth it. And it only takes a minute, right? Usually after the first, let's say 3 or 4 messages, if people don't reply, if they don't take our call, then you can move to a follow-up frequency of every month. Check in once per month. Hey, John, just checking in. I saw this great thing. Here's a link to it. So you're not just checking in, you're giving value. And you're not checking in saying, hey, just checking in to see if you got my last message, because that's very easy to ignore and it's not contributing any new value. They either saw your message and don't care, or they didn't see your message at all. And your CRM tool should tell you if they actually opened your thing. So you want to, again, lead with new value, and you want to switch up your outreach channel, right? If you just keep hammering email, people are just going to put you in the spam. They'll just flag your email as spam, or they'll just archive and ignore you. So reach out on Instagram or hit them up on Facebook. You've got to be organized about this, obviously, because if you're juggling a bunch of outreach, a bunch of prospects, it's going to be very easy to get confused. So follow up. Always follow up. Okay, sales. I'm going to jam through this real quick. This is actually the easiest part of this whole process, right? You've got somebody on the call. You got them on the Zoom, or you got them on the phone. All right, what do you say? How do you handle it? The same way that you've handled every step of the process so far, which is you give them more value. Say, hey, by the way, this other thing that you may not have thought of, is there anything else I can help you? How are you doing with this? And you just give more value, you give more resources, you give away everything that you have for free. Yeah, and it's not a new concept, but it works. Again, we're worried about what is effective. And what is effective is giving away as much value as humanly possible. And also, by this time, and this is where the sequencing is important, if you've got somebody on the phone, they're probably going to be pretty receptive to speaking with you. At least they're not going to be hostile because they've seen your messages. Maybe they consumed your lead magnet or lead magnets, and they'd be like, okay, this guy is not a total jerk. He's trying to help me. He's not pitching me on anything. They're not going to be as reticent, and they're going to be more open to what you have to say. So we're leading with value. And then what you're really trying to do here is you're trying to solicit an invitation, right? Usually by this point, again, this is why I say this is the easiest part. Usually by this point, they're going to just come out and say like, hey, what are you selling? Like, what's your thing? What's your offer? And now you have permission to tell them. Now you say, oh, well, actually, we have a membership where we have a community that helps people like you. In fact, we helped a guy in your same exact situation a month ago. He's doing great. He lost 20 pounds, or whatever is your situation. And some sales techniques do factor in here, but you don't need to be a salesperson or even salesy, because by this point, again, you've built the goodwill, and this is a warm lead, hopefully, right? So you're looking for that invitation, and most people will do it for you. They'll say, well, hey, what's your thing? What are you selling? Some people won't. Some people are going to be coy about it. And that's when you need to kind of solicit it a little bit and say something like, okay, just to be super clear, you've got problem X and it's impacting you in such and such a way, right? And you'd like to solve this problem kind of in a quick and easy way if possible. Is that fair to say? Yes. Great. Can I tell you how I've helped somebody who was in your exact situation get this handled? And you're just going to tell them, like, you very tangentially touch on the fact that you have a membership or what the actual product is, but it's very secondary to the fact that you're focusing on the person's problem and the solution that you gave to somebody just like them in that same situation. Okay, so we're leading with value. We're being very, very muted on the sales part. At least this is my preference. This may not be appropriate if you're in like some particular industry, real estate or something, but this is my preference because I don't like to beg people for business or try to convince them about something that their heart's not really in it. I'm just trying to determine if there's a fit. I'm trying to give so much value to where they want to work with me. It's kind of like outbound, inbound, if you will. Okay, and that's when you reveal your offer. And by the way, guys, I want to touch on this real quick, and this will be kind of the last main point because we're kind of running low on time. But with regards to your offer, right, we talked about what if you have a membership that's a standard $30, $40, $50 a month membership, or even $100 a month membership. Maybe you're thinking, well, this isn't worth my time to sell like a $50 a month membership, right? But at this point, you have to remember that the person you're talking to may not even know that you have a membership. They don't know how your solution is packaged, right? They might think you're like a coach or that you sell a workshop or whatever. They really don't know. And maybe to a certain degree, they don't care, right? They just want the solution to their problem. And so one of the things that you could do is you can, for these scenarios, just sell annual packages. Like, don't even go down the monthly route because then it won't be worth your time. You say, well, look, we sell, a year training. You could position it as a training. And then if they're not going for that, you say, well, we could do like a quarterly, or we could do $1 trial for 14 days. And if you like it, cool, it'll rebill your card. If not, no problem. Just email me, I'll cancel. There's a lot of ways that you can do it, but even if you're at a low priced offer, you can repackage it in a way where it's higher price, to where it's more worth your time. You can include your own time. You could say, hey, you get personal access to me once a month. Well, hey, you can add $500 on just for that. Maybe you don't want to do that, but I'm just saying that there's ways to increase the price of your offer without detracting from the value and without creating new content, basically by packaging your existing content, maybe bonuses, etc. So think about that, and then get the credit card details. Like if they're ready to rock and they're like, hey, okay, yeah, let's do it. I'm ready to sign up. Cool. Why don't you tell me your credit card? I'll go ahead and put you into our payment processor here. It's 100% totally secure, and charge them, and then send them the logins. And this is a very broad strokes presentation, obviously. And I'm going to go ahead and skip talking about the tools and resources, but you guys will have links to the slides of which tools that I use. They're all pretty straightforward. And I think at this point, we can go to the Q&A.
Awesome.
All right. Woo!
Thank you, Vic. That was awesome. I learned a few things there, and I've done some prospecting before. That was really good, and I've harvested some questions from around social media and everything. But first, before we get into that, can you just tell us real quickly what makes MemberHost awesome as a web host for membership sites? You're obviously into helping people, and they need a strong website that's not going to go down, and they need to sell and get clients. But what do you love about MemberHost?
Well, we built MemberHost, Histo, myself, and our co-founder Danny Cave, as a response to the fact that we work with membership sites and have been doing that for over 10 years. And none of the conventional hosting providers really understand membership sites. They just cache the crap out of everything, which you can't do with membership sites. It causes issue. They give you really small amounts of not super powerful resources. Like they're basically the main hosting providers, their whole thing is profit maximization, which there's nothing wrong with that. But what that means practically for you is that you're grossly overpaying for way too few resources, and for a company whose focus is on the general market as opposed to the membership market. So our whole thing is just for like these heavy WordPress sites. So we understand the technical underpinnings, how to do caching in a way that doesn't mess it up. Like we geek out over this stuff, and we outperform virtually any conventional host, and we can objectively prove that with load tests and page load tests. And every customer, I don't think we've lost even one customer. I think one customer left. Is that right, Isto? And that's just because their membership wasn't doing so hot and they just couldn't really justify it anymore.
Yeah, they're paused currently and plan to come back actually this year.
Yeah, so we just built like the best product we could, basically. And I think our best testimonial we ever got was, OMG, it's so fast. And it is. Like you will notice it actually tangibly on the WP admin side, and then members will notice it. But actually, one thing I want to touch on, if I may, Chris, is the thing with membership sites, especially these larger ones, is that they start to crash or they start to slow down precisely when it counts the most, which is when lots of users are joining and when lots of users are participating, right? So that's an issue called concurrency. And that's something that we specialize in. And there are technical reasons that I won't go into that the conventional hosts just don't. Basically, things slow down, your site crashes, is what happens.
That's awesome. And if you get good at the sales prospecting and you start getting that concurrency, the last thing you want to worry about is your membership site going down.
That's right.
Well, everybody out there watching and listening, keep the questions coming. I have a few for you here, Vic. I'll put it up on the screen here. How big should our first prospecting list be for a sniper approach? Because that can be a little overwhelming, I think, to be like, oh, I got to build this giant list. But how big would you recommend, just rule of thumb?
It could be even a few people. I don't know, what do you sell, or like how expensive your offer is, or what your lifetime value on a customer is. So those are all considerations in your calculus of what is worth your time. But if you've got even one person on the list, reach out to them, see how it goes. There's no specific size, is what I'm saying. It's more based on the urgency of their need. That's what makes somebody a good candidate for a sniper approach. It's like, oh, this person really needs some help now. If I reach out, they're going to be super receptive. That's the rule of thumb.
That's awesome. I love that idea of starting with one. Just by getting the gear turning, it just gets easier, especially if you're fearful about reaching out to people. Just do one and then and then do another one, and then it kind of becomes muscle memory. Another question here. What do I say in my Upwork Facebook group scraping job posting. Somebody hasn't posted that kind of thing before, and I'm like, hey, I found the perfect Facebook group that's full of my ideal customer type people. Like, what do I say to Upwork? Like, what's the job title and what are the main things I'm asking them to do?
You would say exactly that. You would say, hey, I want to scrape a Facebook group. Here's the information that I want for those people. As I recall, if you scrape a Facebook group, I think it depends on the software they use. You'll get their email that they signed up to Facebook with, and you'll get their Facebook profile URL. I think that's the base information. And then I think you get some other information too. Like there's some additional data points, but you would just say, hey, I want to scrape a particular group, and I just want everyone's email. So it could be just a scraping post, but it could be like scraping plus enrichment. I just separate those two out because generally there's different people doing those two different functions, and it's more of an assembly line that way, but could be both.
Awesome. And here's another related one. You mentioned earlier in your presentation that you can also build a prospecting list from a Google query. How can you, like, what do you search for on Google to try to start building your prospecting list on your own?
It's hard for me to say how it would apply to your situation. Like, what is your niche, or what do you sell? I can give an example from it's kind of giving away our secret sauce, but one of the things that we do is, like, we could like, all of our customers are membership site owners, right? Or all of our prospective customers, right? And if you have a membership plugin like MemberPress, which we work with, or Lifter, LMS, or any of these plugins, they usually spit out some kind of automatic system pages that have some kind of boilerplate text. So you could literally search that boilerplate text in quotes, and it's just going to pop up a list of pages of websites that have that page and therefore have that plugin installed. And then you can do like a scrape. There's like scrapers that'll just pull, thousands of results. They may or may not be good prospects. That's where enrichment comes in. But that's kind of an example from our industry. Again, I don't know what is your thing, so it's hard for me to give a specific example.
That's awesome. I've never even thought about that. I mean, if you were in a hobby market, like going after people that use Etsy or something, there's probably some kind of page that Etsy has that you could search for or something. That's really interesting.
That's a great example. Yeah, definitely.
Here's another one for you. Can artificial intelligence help with this whole outbound sales or prospecting?
I'm not really, I'm not a fan of AI, but I think it's actually what you don't want to do for outreach. Because first of all, pretty much everybody knows when something's an AI message. At this point, it's not that good yet. And it shows you don't give a shit, basically. It's like, okay, I didn't think enough of you to write your personal. Of course, you're not writing personal message to thousands of people, but it's better for you to write like a template message by hand and send thousands of those out than to use AI. We don't use AI at all. I don't even really see where it would be applicable. And now, if you're needing to take some kind of information from like the person's website and rephrase it or restate it and mix it with something, then yeah, maybe AI will be good for that. We don't really use it. We just write our own copy.
Awesome. And here's another one for you. What does an invitation to pitch sound like? So if you're in like the, I love what you called it, just like giving value, and you never stop giving value. But what is, when somebody kind of raises their hand and not necessarily directly says it, but how do you know you have the invitation to pitch?
Well, okay, if somebody doesn't outright ask you what you're selling, and you're giving value and you're having a conversation, and then there's a lull in the conversation where it's kind of like gets a bit awkward, like, hey, maybe we should end the call kind of thing. They're not giving you an invitation, right? And that's where you would say what I mentioned earlier of restating their problem, restating how they'd like it solved, and then presenting them with some kind of case study that mirrors their situation. But I don't know if I answered the correct question. I think your question is, it's like, how do I know that somebody's giving me an invitation without being direct about it? And that's just like a social awareness thing that I don't know if I could really communicate, but it comes with practice, basically. Your mojo, if you will, in the sales department or in any department where you got to kind of like rap and think on your feet, it comes with volume. You buy mojo at the volume store.
Awesome. I love that. Last one we got for you here. Any tips to avoid getting marked as spam or getting blocked from DM on social media? I see that's a fear that, I've personally had myself when doing outbound. You mentioned on cross-channel, like, okay, maybe you send an email and now you're over here in LinkedIn, but any other just tips on, and also not pitching directly as your first contact or whatever, but anything else you would add?
Yeah, not pitching directly, that's a big one, and having like a legit profile and not just being like some random dude from, India or Bangladesh or something. Like, even if you're outsourcing it, which is totally fine, there's nothing wrong with that. It should be through your profile. And the mechanics are different depending on the platform, right? So for Facebook, my understanding, and we don't do a whole lot of outreach on Facebook, but with that, they block you so quickly now that you basically have to purchase accounts. You have to purchase Facebook accounts and reach out through those accounts. And there are some tools that help mitigate, like the big one being we were looking at called FlowChat. Looks like a super cool tool. We really want to check it out because it's kind of like a CRM, but it also allows you to reach out on different channels. And I think there's a situation where it combats some of that throttling, right? I think you can send 10 cold messages on Facebook before they block you for like an hour. So it depends on the platform, but I think it's like what you said, Chris, is if you lead with value, if you're not spammy or salesy, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, like figure out what the rules of the platform are, and don't blow and especially if you're using like your main account, don't use your main Instagram account, because then you're going to lose all those. Same with your email, right? Don't use your email domain. Use like the .net, like buy the .net and create an email for that .net and use that for your outreach. So there's like a lot of little tips and tricks, but that's what you want to do.
That's awesome. Pro tips right there. You can tell that Vic is just giving value right here, helping you get clients, and he cares deeply about the membership site industry, and he's built an awesome hosting solution that if you're a serious player and you're looking to scale and have a solid tech stack, I want to encourage you to check out memberhost.io. Do you have anything else places you want to send people, Vic, or anything else? And I'll put the slides on the Lifter LMS webinars page, and you'll see this presentation there within a day. And I'd encourage you to check out all the other resources and tools that in the slide deck and stuff like that. But anything else, Vic, for the people?
Yeah, funny enough, I feel like maybe I didn't give enough value because there's so much to cover, and we just didn't have time to get into all of the details and nuance. So if you guys have any questions, just hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, email, whatever is your channel of choice, and ask me any questions if you want. I'm happy to help all of the participants of this webinar. No strings attached. I'm not selling any coaching or anything like that. So if you have any questions, hit me up. I'm happy to assist and help you guys grow the outbound side of your business if I can.
Awesome. Well, Vic, Risto, thank you for coming. We appreciate the presentation you put together here. This is a great resource. If you're watching this on the replay or you caught the end and you want to see the beginning, you can check it out at Lifter LMS webinars. Just do a Google search for that. It'll be near the top of the list. And go check out memberhost.io. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and watching. Thank you, Vic and Risto, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.